Most mornings, fog is just a nuisance you slow down to drive through. A gray hush that settles over a field or a forest, swallows the streetlights, and burns off before lunch. It looks like nothing more than wet air. For as long as anyone has bothered to define it, that's pretty much what fog has been. A weather effect, a cloud that lost its footing and sank to the ground. There's a quiet, hypnotic pull to a thick fog. The way distance disappears, familiar streets turn strange, and sound goes soft and close. We treat it as scenery, a mood, a mild hazard for the commute, and never think to ask whether the fog itself might be up to something. A recent study took a much closer look at that wet air, and what it turned up is strange enough to change how you see a foggy morning for good. Fog is not just weather, at least some of it's alive in the most literal sense, packed with living things that are feeding, growing, and multiplying in the mist right around you. And these are not stowaways that blew in by accident. The work suggests fog can be a working ecosystem, a floating habitat as crowded with microbes as a pond, with residents that seem to do something quietly useful, scrub poisons from the air we breathe. To see how a team got from gray morning mist to a living, breathing microbe world, it helps to start with what fog really is, and then catch the exact moment the whole picture flips. Start with the plain physics, because it pays off in a minute. Fog is really just a cloud at ground level. When the air is holding enough water vapor and then cools, that vapor latches onto tiny floating specks, bits of dust or salt or soot, and condenses into countless minute droplets. Get enough of them hanging together near the surface and everything goes soft and gray. There are a few flavors of it. One kind rolls in when warm, damp air slides over a cold surface. The one that matters here forms on its own overnight, on a clear, calm night as the ground gives up its heat and the air just above it chills to the point where the moisture has to come out. That sort needs near total stillness, almost no wind, and that stillness turns out to be the secret ingredient behind the whole discovery. That overnight type has a faintly alarming name, radiation fog, though it has nothing to do with X-rays or anything dangerous. The radiation in question is just the ordinary heat the ground sheds back into the sky after sunset, the same cooling that makes a clear night turn sharp and cold. The calm is the part that counts. If there is any wind, whatever you find floating in the fog could have blown in from miles away. In dead still fog, nothing arrives on a breeze. Anything living in there grew up right where you found it, local, homegrown, belonging to that exact patch of ground. So when scientists pulled life out of this kind of fog, they knew it had not been imported from somewhere else. They had caught a native. That one detail, stillness, is what made this fog trustworthy as a natural laboratory. A windy fog is a crowd of strangers passing through. A calm one is a sealed room, and whatever turns up inside has a story that belongs to that place alone. Fog already does more for life than it gets credit for. Whole forests lean on it. The towering coast redwoods of California, some of the tallest living things on Earth, drop to 40% of their yearly water straight from the fog drifting through their crowns, drinking the mist when the summer rains run dry. So fog was already on the books as a kind of life support system, a silent delivery service for water. You can almost watch it happen under those trees on a foggy morning. Mist beads on the needles, pools, and falls as a slow, steady drip onto the forest floor. A private rainfall the redwoods coax out of thin air. Take the fog away, and the giants begin to thirst. The new work blows past that idea. Fog is not only feeding the ecosystem. In a real sense, fog is the ecosystem, a living place in its own right, a home with residents of its own. Not as a metaphor, not as poetry, but as a real address where things are born, fed, and reproduce. To pin that down, a team built around Arizona State University, working with a researcher at Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania, spent about 2 years chasing fog. Not for the romance of it, but rising before dawn to catch that still, overnight fog as it formed over the fields, then carefully drawing water straight out of the mist with custom collectors. Fog is a maddening thing to study, which is part of why so few people bother. It shows up on its own schedule, hangs around for an hour, then vanishes with the sunrise. So you have to be standing in the right field, gear ready, out in the cold dark on exactly the right night. Miss the window and you wait for the next one. When they looked at what was floating in that fog water, the count stopped them. In a single millimeter, barely a sip, they were tallying on the order of 1 million bacterial gene copies. To put that in plain terms, that is roughly the same crowding of microscopic life you would pull from a millimeter of ocean or lake water. So the next time you walk through a thick fog, you're wading through something far closer to a pond than to empty air. A body of water so fine that it floats, and just as full of life. For a long time, science assumed those airborne microbes were mostly just along for the ride, dormant hitchhikers waiting to land somewhere better. Finding close to 1 million of them crammed into a sip of fog was the first clue that the assumption might be exactly backwards. Before you write these microbes off as bad luck, helpless specks that got swept up and trapped in the haze, hold on. The question the team chased next is the one that flips the whole story. Are these things simply stuck in the mist, or have they moved in on purpose? Prisoners or residents? What they found drags the answer away from fluke and towards something that looks a lot like a deliberate, thriving little world. To settle it, the researchers tried 2 clever things. First, they sized up the bacteria themselves. Cells riding inside the fog droplets were noticeably bigger than the same kinds of bacteria drifting in the dry air nearby. In biology, a cell that has plumped up is usually a cell getting ready to split, the mark of an organism that is fed, busy, and about to reproduce. Second, they counted how many cells were caught in the act of dividing, and inside the fog, that rate ran far higher than in the dry air around it. Lay those 2 clues side by side, and the verdict is hard to dodge. The bacteria are not passengers. They are residents, fed and breeding inside the droplet. For these microbes, that little bead of water is not a trap. It's the best address in the sky, a tiny pool of water and nutrients hanging in midair, and they are settling in to stay. This is a tidy piece of detective work. You can't ask a bacterium whether it is comfortable, so you read the evidence it leaves behind, the swollen cells, the burst of division, and you let that evidence speak. These microbes are not merely surviving up there, they are flourishing. So what exactly is living up there? One group kept turning up again and again, dominating the fog, a genus called Methylobacterium. These are specialists, microbes that get on by the simplest carbon molecules around, including one that should make you raise an eyebrow. They eat formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is not a friendly chemical. It counts as a genuine pollutant. It feeds smog, and in high enough doses, it is toxic to people and bacteria alike. Yet, these fog microbes treat it like dinner, and they rip through it fast. In the fog samples, formaldehyde was being broken down at rates up to 200 times quicker than anything ever measured in cloud water. The bacteria were not merely tolerating the poison, they were pulling it straight from the air. A twist hides in how they manage it too. The microbes seem to break down far more formaldehyde than they could ever use to build their own bodies, which hints that they are not just eating it for fuel. They may be neutralizing it on purpose, turning a poison into something harmless to make their own droplets safer to live in. Sit with what that means for a moment. We tend to think of the chemistry of the sky as lifeless, pure reactions between gases with nobody home. This says otherwise. When fog rolls in, a living crew clocks in and starts scrubbing certain pollutants out of the atmosphere, a cleaning service nobody knew was running. Fog, it seems, may be helping to wash the very air you breathe. That discovery comes with a catch. In dry corners of the world, people hang big nets to harvest fog for drinking water and crops, and the old assumption was that fog came down clean, close to sterile. This says, think again. Fog water is teeming, and not every passenger is friendly. A few of these microbes can turn into opportunistic germs under the right conditions, which means fog caught for drinking may deserve a far closer look than it has ever been given. There's even a name for this overlooked crowd, the aerobiome, the community of microbes riding the air above our heads. We always picture them as passive dust, drifting wherever the wind takes them. This work suggests at least some of them are wide awake up there, busier and more alive than their cousins down on the ground. And none of this was a one-time fluke. Across those 2 years, the same pattern showed up in 32 separate fog events. Again and again, the collected water came back loaded with that same air-cleaning microbe, its growth rising and falling mainly with temperature. The conclusion the team reached was blunt. We should stop filing fog under pure weather and start seeing it for what it is, a dynamic, functioning body of water that just happens to float. Step back, and a study about Pennsylvania fog suddenly has something to say about other worlds. For decades, astrobiologists have argued over whether life could ride the clouds of another planet, and Venus is the prime suspect. Its surface is a crushing lead-melting furnace, but rise to about 34 miles up and you hit a layer where the temperature and pressure turn weirdly Earth-like, just a good deal more acidic. The standing objection was always that nothing could truly live while suspended in open air for the long haul. A foggy field in Pennsylvania just chipped away at that objection. If microbes can't set up house in the air down here, the same thing might be unfolding in the clouds of Venus right now, and missions headed for that atmosphere may soon tell us. It is a strange thought that the answer to whether we are alone could be hiding not in some far-off world, but in the same kind of damp air that rolls across a Pennsylvania field at dawn. The fog is only the newest place life has shown up where it had no business being. Dig into the rock under your feet and you reach the deep biosphere, mapped over 10 years by a team of more than 1,000 scientists, holding more microbial life than every ocean on the planet combined. Some of it sits miles down, hanging on for ages in near suspended animation, so starved for energy that a single life cycle can stretch across thousands of years. Biology running in the slowest of slow motion. Researchers have taken to calling it an underground Galapagos, a hidden realm of microbial dark matter evolving by its own rules, walled off from sunlight since close to the dawn of the planet. And it's not only microbes down there. A tiny worm, a nematode no thicker than a hair, was pulled from a rock about 0.9 miles beneath a South African gold mine, a whole animal at home in permanent darkness and bruising pressure. One scientist compared finding it down there to spotting a whale in a small lake, a creature millions of times larger than the microbes it feeds on, somewhere nothing that complex had any right to be. Other extremes tell the same tale. In Trinidad sits a lake of hot, toxic asphalt, and a single gram of that black goo can carry up to 10 million microbes. Even sealed under the ice of Antarctica, in lakes cut off from everything for millions of years, life has been quietly holding on in the dark. The lesson keeps repeating itself. Wherever there is a sliver of energy and a little liquid water, something has usually worked out how to live on it. Out of all those hidden corners, the fog may hit the hardest of all. The deep crust in the asphalt lake always sounded alien. Fog is the opposite. It's ordinary, harmless, the soft gray nuisance that makes you reach for your headlights. Learning that it's quietly crowded with living things, busy cleaning the sky, turns a familiar nothing into somebody's entire world. Drive through fog now and you're passing through an uninhabited place. The same patch of mist you have rolled through 100 times, barely noticing, has been a living world the whole time, going about its quiet business just out of sight. All of this is a good reminder that the things we feel most sure about are often the ones still hiding the biggest surprises. Fog is one perfect case and far from the only one. Take something as old and as simple as the wheel. The story of how it got invented seemed completely settled, right up until a fresh look turned it on its head. If you want to see how wrong the old wheel story was, that video's right here.